Alrighty, welcome to the channel. I guess today is Friday. You guys made it if you work Monday through Friday. For the rest of us who work Saturday and Sunday, it's just another day, right? So, what are we talking about today? Well, I thought we'd do a continuation on the used parts debate, and that's what it is. It's looking at all your options and trying to figure out what's best for you and the customer. So, stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. My name is Eric, and yes, this is a weekday, Monday through Friday. Today is Friday, the 30th of May, 2025. So, what is the big debate on new versus used parts? And it's because used parts have got kind of a negative rap, per se. And they shouldn't, because a lot of people, especially the guys that are, you guys out there that are do-it-yourselfers, it's one of the cheapest ways to get out of a project. Ed, you mentioned electrical, that you don't do anything with electrical. And actually, we do, based on the customer's needs and if it's even available. See, that's the other thing you have to watch out for is parts are being discontinued quicker. And we've gotten into that, but the major reason is they know that the Chinese will have already decimated the market on parts, on those parts that they came out with within 3 to 4 years. So it's not profitable for them to carry those parts after that period. They know the Chinese will have the market share. So what do you do at that point? I mean, I had a customer come in yesterday and talk with me, and he wanted to know if he could get Onin parts. And basically, my answer was no, not unless you find somebody that's got new old stock, other than going used. There's still a few Onin engines kicking around here and there, and you could salvage parts off from it. I talked about, yesterday about guys that I know that have bought second and third machines just for parts, just so that they can keep their main machine going. And because the parts are no longer available. And if they are, they're stupid money. The ones that are stupid money are the John Deere and the Simplicity, Ferris, and probably not thinking but John Deere especially, because John Deere has been very smart with their parts in that they don't mass produce them in China, or at least not that I know of, because if they had, we would see a lot of the John Deere parts being sold here. Case in point. All right, look at steel. Steel had a hell of a run. I've always been a steel man myself. But they went to China and decided that to get the biggest bang for the buck and to lower the low-end saws so that they could get more sales, they opted to go to China and build a manufacturing plant, have China do all the parts for that machine. So what ended up happening? They ended up coming out with, from China, identical twin chainsaw that was a lot of people call them knockoffs, but they're not. They run and work as well as a steel, but the difference is the price. And you're going to say, well, the steels are so much better than this knockoff. Well, any part on this knockoff will fit on that steel, and vice versa. So why would someone spend $300 on a steel when they can buy the knockoff at 120. Same CC, same friggin' saw, except for it's not the color of steel, but it's still a steel, right? It may not have that printed on it, but it is. It's a different color. It's a knockoff. But like Jason, you were saying that you used, I figured you would, and we do, depending upon the situation. I agree with Ed, with you was saying the electrical stuff, but what I do keep is a number of good coils that I know that are working and that I can swap to see if that's the issue. And then if that's the issue, I give my customer the option of leaving it with a used one on it and it's running, or ordering a new one. Keeping your customer in the loop and looking out for your customer will get you return business. If you're looking out just for your business and you got the attitude, it is what it is, you're not going to be in business long. And you have to give some gimmies. I'm sorry. I've had so many people in business tell me that I'm doing business the wrong way. That it's all about dollars and cents. You can't give customers stuff for free. You have to eat too. But I come from a different cloth in that I'm going to charge my customers accordingly. But an example, case in point, I have one customer brings all their stuff to us. And she sent me a message through Facebook. And she said, we're having problems with our trimmer. The primer bulb was busted. So I said, okay, did he want to put the primer bulb on himself? And she said, no, we're just going to drop it off. So they dropped it off. It took me all of 5 minutes to unscrew the primer bulb, put a new primer bulb on it, and put it back together. And they didn't live that far away. So I also dropped it off for them. And she's like, how much do we owe you, Eric? I said, nothing. She goes, yeah, you can't do it for nothing. I said, no, it's nothing. Who is she and he going to go to the next time they have problems and need stuff repaired? If you can give people stuff on the low end, you're going to gain so much of their business. If you treat them right, you'll have a return customer, and they'll be your best advertisers, by the way. And if you've been in business very long, you know that advertising is expensive. And you got to look at your return on your investment when it comes to advertising. And the best bang, which is free, is just joining some local groups, asking the moderator if you can post a little blip about you working on stuff, and doing that like once a month. You don't need to plaster it all over their community. But yeah, we do use a lot of used parts. But our customers know it. When it comes to transmissions, we've had, and I say had because it wasn't that long ago I had the whole yard cleaned up. But I had at least 11 of the newer John Deeres, and half of them had bad transmissions. And it was well known in the John Deere, the big box stores equipment was the ones that, you get, quite a few years out of it, but then the transmission would start slipping in it, of where it wouldn't even pull itself on a hill. So you could either slap in a new transmission, which is around $800-900 wholesale, or you could take a transmission out of the 3 or 4 good ones that you have sitting there that have bad engines. And for my customer, it's a no-brainer, because they're looking at, on a good day, their lawnmower being worth $1,000. So why should they put $900 into what is only worth $1,000. But if they can get away with it for a couple $100 with a used one installed, you get paid your hourly rate either way. And pretty much, if you're like me, that transmission didn't cost squat. So it was free money to me, because a lot of the stuff that I have that accumulates is from customers deciding not to go any further on it. That they went out and bought a new one, keep the old one. And I've had customers stop and drop off perfectly good running machines just because they decided they were updating. But we utilize as many used parts as we can. And I'll tell you, by the time my buddy there that's the scrapper comes in, Claude has yanked off quite a few parts from up above. Whether it's a used carburetor, whether it's a used head from a blown head gasket that wore a groove into the head, to especially tires and rims. We go through a lot of those. We just take it off and we charge $15-20 for the tire and rim, all pumped up. All they got to do is just take it home, put it on. Engines. That's a little bit different. I don't like creating Frankenstein engines unless the customer is very vocal about that's the way they want it. You know, we did one that was a John Deere that had the Kawasaki liquid cooled engine in it. And he loved the lawnmower, but the cost to fix that, because you put a hole right through the side of the block, was cost prohibitive. But we had a used engine that would drop in that was actually bigger than that Kawasaki. And we had to rework the wiring and stuff. But that's what he wanted. That was the cheapest way out, because he had a bunch of attachments that went to that John Deere. So we had one that got dropped off, that the transmission was bad, but the engine was solid. It didn't have a lot of hours on it. But the transmissions are cheapy, the hydrostatic. So we went ahead and we swapped and put the engine in it. And that was 3-4 years ago. And the guy says it's still running like a top. You have to, as a shop owner, don't overlook used parts. They are a moneymaker. They're not much of a moneymaker to strip down and try to sell them on eBay, because there's so many people trying to sell the same thing. But as you said, Jason, check prices on eBay of what stuff is going for and charge accordingly to your customer. Your customer is always in the driver's seat. We used to be all new. Nothing, we didn't want to monkey with used, because we didn't want to do any do-overs. That was my attitude. Go new, that way we don't need to worry about it. But then I started seeing that even with a lot of new parts, we were doing do-overs on the new part because the new part failed. And, whose fault is it? Doesn't matter. It ends up on us that it's not working. And that's our job, is to get it working and have it continue to work. But a lot of times when I'm troubleshooting in the yard, if I have one that is running pretty rough and I see I'm not getting a spark off from, on the twin one side of the coil, I will put a used one on it to see what's going on. Is it the coil or is it somewhere further back? And a lot of times I find that, okay, so it is the coil. And at that point, I do up the two different prices. One is with a used coil, one's with a new coil. The hours are going to be the same. And, I leave it up to my customer. Do I warranty the stuff that's going out that's used? Yes. and I'll warranty it for up to 30 days. But the thing is, what I find anyways, is we tend to have to warranty anything on that machine once it leaves our premises. And why is that? Well, it's because if you're doing everything right, that customer should have a carefree summer. Yes, 90% of the stuff that I see after we release it is customer or is operator error. And that is not using it the way it was manufactured to be used. We had a guy yesterday drop off a push mower. He said it wasn't running right. Well, here's the deal. Check the fuel, and he's been running 2-stroke mix in it, 50-1. It's a 4-stroke push mower. 2, the air filter was so plugged you couldn't see air. You couldn't get air through to go through it. 3, he was mowing grass. He just gotten back from Florida, and he was mowing grass that was over a foot tall, and wondering why the lawnmower was bogging down and smoking. Well, it was smoking because you got 2-stroke in it, and you're cutting grass that you should be using a brush hog on. But we're seeing that a lot with the customers as of late, is they're complaining that their mower is bogging down, but they're in foot or more grass that a lawnmower was not made to mow. I'm telling you right now, you need a brush hog. You don't need a lawnmower. So you need to give some kind of a threshold on used parts. And that's going to dictate on whether you're willing to put a used part on it or a new part on it. You know, if you put a used coil on it and it's running great, and the customer gets a hold of you a week later and says it's doing the same thing, the chances of that coil breaking down that quickly is really small. There's another issue going on there that's causing that side to break down. And you as a mechanic, you're like the inspector, where you're trying to, you got your big eyeglass thing there, and you're trying to find clues of what's going on there. And if you can figure out what's going on there, then you can talk with your customer, and good chances are, had you put a brand new one on it, you would be in the same boat that you are now with that used one. And that has happened. And we replaced it with a brand new coil, only to find another week and it had broken down. And it was farther back on the system. Why it only affected one and not the other had us clueless, but this is real world experience. I'm not sure what you have for customers, but most of my customers, money's tight, and it has been for almost 5 years. They don't have a lot of disposable income, and I can tell just by the way they react when they call us on the phone to see if we can help them, and then they're wanting us to give them an estimate before they even bring their stuff. I don't know. I can't do an estimate unless I see it. And then we're in no hurry, but the next day they call and want to know if it's ready yet. So I'm going to start wrapping this up, but there is a big debate over new versus used. A lot of shops stay away from the used parts market because they think it cheapens their work. The quality of your work is always going to be exceptional if you're a good mechanic, right? Don't overlook the obvious. It depends upon location. If you're in an area where people make a decent living, you're probably going to go all new. If you live in a rural area or poor section of town, used parts are what's going to get you through because it's all profit for most of us. So on that note, put in the comments what your thoughts are. I mean, I know a lot of you guys were saying, no, we need to go new. Have you tried the used parts market before? And for you guys that have got boneyard full of stuff, I mean, when we have stuff come in, we get 100.5 for a deck. It's decent that a customer can just take it, throw on their machine that's rusted out. Tires and rims, it's always a demand for that. Engines, I'm always being asked about engines, especially the horizontal shaft engines. So you can take and look at your boneyard as scrap price, or you can look at it as money in the bank. And if you can get it undercover, that's great. When we first started running the shop, what we ended up doing was we hired a couple kids that were still in school but were out for the summer, and I had them start pulling transmissions and engines and tagging them so that we could put them on the shelf if we needed them. That's another way. But don't overlook it if you have in the past. So on that note, you guys have a great Friday, and we'll catch you here Monday for the next episode of the weekday. You guys have a great weekend.